I'm Teisha Bader with Shalom TV's news update for Friday, November the 15th, 2013. Amid tensions between the United States and Israel over the Iran issue, Israeli President Shimon Peres attempted to calm relations between the two countries. Peres' office released a statement today saying we must not underestimate the importance of this friendship. Further saying there can be disagreements, but they must be conducted with a view to the true depth of the situation. Adding, if we have disagreements, we should voice them, but we should remember that the Americans also know a thing or two. We are not the only ones. Tensions between the U.S. and Israel relate to the recent talks in Geneva between Iran and the P5+1. The U.S. and other world powers proposed a deal to Iran that would entail the easing of sanctions in return for some concessions in Iran's nuclear program, whereas Israel says tough sanctions must remain until Iran dismantles its entire uranium enrichment program.
They dilute some of the highly enriched
U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations Samantha Power told CBS This Morning today that the U.S. needs to check the seriousness of Iran's intentions before signing any deal with them.
We have to test this regime. I mean, there is so much mistrust, of course, that we bring to these negotiations after generations of suspicion, and that cuts both ways.
In regards to Israel, Power said that Israel has been a great partner and that the goals of the U.S. and Israel are identical, and that is to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. Power said a deal with Iran would involve temporary, modest, reversible, and limited relief in sanctions in return for the freezing of the Iranian nuclear program and Tehran diluting some of the high-enriched uranium they already have. President Obama had said yesterday that a strike against nuclear facilities in Iran could lead Iran to pursue even more vigorously nuclear weapons in the future. The president said no matter how good our military is, military options are always messy. Any armed conflict has cost to it, he said. The president further said that he hoped Congress would hold off on new sanctions against Iran while talks in Geneva were still ongoing, saying the U.S. was serious about resolving the issue diplomatically. But he added, our policy is Iran cannot have nuclear weapons, and I'm leaving all options on the table. Meanwhile, the Jerusalem Post reports that Israel is actively lobbying the U.S. Congress to pass new sanctions against Iran. Israel's Economy and Trade Minister Naftali Bennett was sent to Washington, D.C. this week for that purpose. He told the Post yesterday, we're bringing information and our point of view to the Hill and to the legislators. He said what we're learning is there's a shared goal, if perhaps a difference in the tactics. U.S. National Security Advisor Susan Rice reiterated the U.S.'s stance on Israeli settlement building. Rice was addressing Washington think tank the Middle East Institute yesterday, where she made it clear that the U.S. saw the settlements as an obstacle to peace. Rice said we have seen increased tensions on the ground. Some of this is a result of recent settlement announcements. So let me reiterate, Rice said, the United States does not accept the legitimacy of continued Israeli settlement activity. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry made similar comments last week during his visit to the Middle East. At an annual interfaith gathering of Catholics, Jews, and Protestants in Argentina, there was disruption caused by a small group of religious extremists. The gathering marked the anniversary of Kristallnacht, or the Night of Broken Glass, the beginning of the Holocaust. It is led annually in Buenos Aires by Cardinal Jorge Mario Bergoglio together with Rabbi Abraham Skorka. During Tuesday night's ceremony, members of the Society of St. Pius X, a breakaway group of traditionalist Catholics, disrupted the ceremony by shouting the Rosary and the Our Father prayer and spreading pamphlets saying that Jews were blaspheming the place, that, quote, followers of false gods must be kept out of the sacred temple. The protesters were soon escorted out of the area by police, and Buenos Aires Archbishop Mario Poli, named by the Pope to replace him as Argentina's top church official, appealed for calm. Poli reassured the Jewish members of the audience, saying, dear Jewish brothers, please feel at home, because that's the way Christians want it, despite these signs of intolerance. Poli added, your presence here doesn't desecrate a temple of God. We will continue in peace this encounter that Pope Francis always promoted, valued, and appreciated so much. Several Jewish groups reacted to the incident, among them the Latin American Jewish Congress, whose executive director Claudio Eppelman said that in the face of manifestations of fundamentalism and intolerance, dialogue must be strengthened. World Jewish Congress Vice President Julio Schlosser, who heads the Argentine Jewish umbrella group DAIA, denounced the attack, and B'nai B'rith International, who sponsored the interfaith ceremony in Buenos Aires, condemned the behavior of the St. Pius members. B'nai B'rith International President Alan Jacobs said this incident is a prime example of why we can never allow the passing of time to undermine the memory of what occurred during the night of broken glass, adding even though those who harbor hatred towards Jews are in the minority, we must remain vigilant against them. And the organization's executive vice president, Daniel Mariashin, praised Archbishop Poli for his response to the incident. Mariashin said in this horrifying incident, especially for the Holocaust survivors in attendance, it is comforting to know how quickly the protest was repudiated by Archbishop Poli. It shows the bond, he said, between the Jewish and Catholic communities has strengthened and that there is no tolerance for hateful rhetoric. The Jewish Week reports that the world's largest children's book publisher, Scholastic, has apologized for publishing a map of the Middle East that omits Israel. The map appears in a book which is part of the popular children's series Geronimo Stilton. Following a report from the Times of Israel about the omission this week, the publisher released a statement saying it was immediately stopping the shipment of Thea Stilton and the Blue Scarab Hunt and reprinting the book. The book was published in June of 2012. It tells of a journalist, Mouse, who travels to Egypt to participate in an archaeological excavation. The statement included an apology for the mishap. It said, "We regret the omission," which was in the original version of the book, published in Italy and was translated by our company for English language distribution. Anti-Defamation League National Director Abe Foxman thanked Scholastic for the apology. He also called on its president and CEO Richard Robinson to remove the image on the book series website, as well as issue a public statement that the book will be reissued with a better map. Apparently, several booksellers' websites, as of late Wednesday night at least, were allowing the sale of the book. And as the death toll in the Philippines continues to climb after a devastating typhoon hit there last week, some celebration today. The Israeli army announced today that the first baby boy delivered by members of the IDF mission in the field hospital set up in the Philippines. The baby's mother decided to name him Israel. The IDF humanitarian mission completed the setup of the field hospital in the storm-ravaged city of Cebu earlier today. The mission is made up of 147 members, among them National Search and Rescue Unit officials and senior doctors in the IDF Medical Corps. And Israel's Defense Minister Moshe Ya'alon spoke with his Filipino counterpart Voltaire Gazmin today, saying that it was Israel's moral obligation to help the Philippines in the wake of this disaster. Ya'alon said our two nations share a trusting relationship, and in these moments we see it in action. The Israeli people, Ya'alon said, feel the pain of the Filipino people and stand by their sides in this difficult hour. Adding, I'm hopeful the IDF delegation sent to the Philippines will help as much as is possible with saving lives. And that's Shalom TV's news update for Friday, November the 15th, 2013. Remember, live Shabbat services from New York City's Central Synagogue are coming up at 6. I'm Teisha Bader. Shabbat Shalom.